Welcome back. Today we're going to pick up right where we left off in the last video. The last video we built a Discord bot that let us simply reverse the text of whatever the user typed in, as we see on the screen right here. A simple, effective bot. It worked well. It gave us a starting point. Today, though, we are going to actually go through the process of combining the AI conversation bot and the Discord bot into a fully functioning conversational system. So let's get straight to it and demonstrate the process. Now, before we get too far into this, we have to talk about a certain situation that exists in Discord, and that is message limits. And we're going to go through and demonstrate that right now. So let's start by actually seeing the bot working. Now, I've already made the bot and put everything together so that when I go to type, you're going to actually see the response from the AI. So let's start out. With a nice simple question. And of course it'd help if I was actually typing. So now we're going to press enter. The bot is going to come out and away we go. We have a response. A nice simple response. And that is really what we want. But we notice something different about this response than the previous response. For example, as we look up here, this response is in white. But down here, this response is in yellow or a different color. And that is because of what Discord calls a mention. When somebody actually uses your name, mentions you, or tags you, as the common phrases are in the system, it changes the color. This is important, and it will help us see a very significant problem that exists within Discord with the size and limitations of the amount you can type into it, or the size of your message. Messages in Discord cannot be larger than 2,000 characters. And that can be a problem for the AI because sometimes, depending upon the question you ask, it can be a really unique and long response. Let's see if we can generate one of those responses now. Let's see. Let's think of a question. So this should trigger a rather long response, one that would really scroll on the screen if we were using the console. And of course it takes a few seconds for the bot to respond. And the more in-depth the question is, the longer the time is going to take for the bot to actually be able to go through and respond to that question. And as you can see here, we have an immense and enormous amount of material. This clearly went over the size restrictions of a single message. So let's go back and look at the entirety of what this message is. Now, as I said, the yellow part. It's yellow because the AI the response mentioned my name. Now, you don't have to do this, but in a full Discord server with real people in it that are constantly talking back and forth, having the bot talk directly to the user by mentioning them adds a personal touch to the system. Plus, it simply makes it easier for the user to know that their question has been answered or responded to. So this is a nicety to build into your bot that can really enhance the flow and the usefulness of the content you are trying to provide your members. So as we can see from this response, it is quite in-depth. Now, even though it still has the personality of watching wet paint dry, it is still very useful. And that really is an incredible tool. Educational value that this kind of context represents is really immeasurable. You have literally the world's libraries at your fingertips in a lot of ways. There's really nothing you can't do at this point with this very simple framework. So here's the first message, or I should say the first fragment, that is cut off at around 1900 characters. Now we see that the second message, or the transition, starting right here, is white because there is no mention. So the bot is able to keep the conversation flowing without making it look disjointed or over abusing mentioning the user's name. And that is because we use a technique called word wrapping and message splitting. And we will show that function specifically within the program itself when we get that far. So as we look at this framework, we can see just how the bot can be incredibly useful. And that is really an important aspect we need to consider. It looks nice, and we can see we are now in 2.5 messages. So having this technique at your fingertip helps you mitigate the limitations that the server has for a single message. So now let's take and get into the actual code, break it down, and see how I married both the Discord bot program and the OpenAI conversation program into one complete system. Now that we are in the program, let's go through it and actually break it down and go step by step in terms of just how I've laid this out. Now this program is available already on a companion repository in the extras folders. It's a beautiful way to start and get into AI and Discord, and it is complete. You can take this program wherever you want at this point. It is fully functional. So let's start out with the very top. I want the program able to run from the command line. So this lets me do that. It's the hashbang process. But let's get into the modules for Discord we're going to need. We're going to need the system, the OS, the JSON, the Discord module itself, the OpenAI module, and the tick token module. Now I've done a little bit of rearranging within the two programs to marry them together. And what I've done is I've separated out the globals to a section at the top of the program. And that includes your Discord token key and your OpenAI key. Do not ever give these out to anybody. Never give them out. From there, I've made the memory file appropriate to the program. Now, I'm using a single memory file here, but as your server grows or as your program grows, you might want to have a memory file for a different channel or for each and every individual user or both, where you can combine a myriad of options and functionality to your bot in a way to really give it a depth and breadth of conversation. So, let's get to the Discord part. If you remember the last video, then we know that this is the part we need. We are telling Discord that we want all non-privileged intentions. And then we want the privileged intention of being able to read messages. And finally, we tell the Discord client what we want. Short, sweet, and simple. Now, going from the conversation bot, we need to be able to read and write files. We need to be able to read the memory into the file or into Discord so that the program can communicate with the user and actually have the conversation. And once the user has added their question to the conversation, we need to be able to rewrite that information back out to disk. And this takes place each and every time as the user and the bot interact with each other. Simple, short, and sweet, but incredibly vital resources. Now we get to the open AI functions that existed in the conversation, and that is the token limit function. Remembering from the couple videos ago that the AI has a context limit. The context limit is how much information the bot or the service can actually store in terms of the conversation. So what we need to do is make sure that we stay under the maximum limit per single request to the AI service. Every AI service has their own unique limitations. And some services that support multiple models, each model has its own context. Whether it's 4096, 16,384, or like the one that I am using to drive this example, 128,000. You need to take into account what those limitations are when you are thinking about how much you want to build on your AI bot. The better or the higher contexts quite often give better responses. But that is strictly on the basis of your intention. If you're trying to build a scientific bot, then that may not be the case, where you might only want a context of 8192. And in the future, different videos, we're going to go through a lot of different AI models, engines, and whatnot, and actually show the difference of just how different these models can be. And there is a large variety available. It's really a rich tapestry that can bring a uniqueness to your server that is very, very much a welcoming experience to your users. So, go back to the couple of videos ago where I talked about the conversation bot to really get an in-depth example of this particular function. It's not that complicated, but it is an important step in keeping your program functioning and keeping the conversation flowing in a meaningful way. Now we go down to the OpenAI module itself. This is where we take the user's request and we actually send it to the service. Now, in a large-scale project, you're going to want the model to be something you can change. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I simply chose the model that works best for what I want to demonstrate. That is the GPT 4o mini model. It's cost efficient and it does provide a rich tapestry or a rich linguistic value for a wide range of conversations that you can hold with it. Now, the big difference that we see between Discord and the AI conversational bot is we now really push the actual memory or the persona into the AI directly. Meaning we have taken a large amount of different responses between user and the machine, combined them together into a list, and now we put that entire process into the AI service. In essence, we are creating the conversation element that the service can follow and flow and respond to. So moving on to the next part. Here we get into the babble part. That is the part that actually takes the input, adds it to the list, and builds the whole memory structure. A lot of modern AI models are doing this for the users, but I prefer to do it myself because here I'm using a simple process of taking out the oldest entry, replacing it with the newest entry once I get to a certain limit. But that may not always be the best way to go, and in fact you might want to take out entries that no longer correspond with whatever the most recent topic is. So by doing this kind of work yourself, you have opened up the door to being allowed to decide what entries actually get put into the model to actually go through the process of analysis or being able to shape the conversation appropriate to what you might want it to. But it's not that different from what we talked about a couple of videos ago. In fact, it's pretty much the same. Really, a lot of this actually isn't changed very much. Just minor changes in terms of how we connect and communicate between the two components. Okay, now we get into the word wrapping or word splitting or message splitting section. This really is the heart of connecting with Discord. This is the part that really brings home the depth of what we just demonstrated, where the model's response could be 2 or 3 messages. This is where we decide to plug in the user's name or to go into the process and actually begin to somehow shape and control the message. Now, I've put this here, even though we don't demonstrate it today, but we've demonstrated it in the last video with the welcome. If the message is none, meaning no message has come into this function, then we are dealing with the Discord welcome message. And that actually has a special channel. Discord has a complete special way of accessing the welcome message. So it's really simple, rich, and available. Now this kind of highlights and alludes to a future process. But really, for now, we're going to ignore this and get down to the meat and bones of the response. That was just kind of a spoiler of some of the good stuff coming. And we're going to see in the future that really the sky is the limit. But on to what we're doing now. If the message response is less than or equal to 1900 characters, I specifically chose this because quite often when you get close to the 2000 character limit, you might get like a sentence or two in the next message and it looks weird. So using less than 1900 or 1500 or 1600 just provides a better way of going. And if the author is present, and that's an important thing, which we kind of allude to up here. The author is part of the mention within the message. So when the message is passed into this function, the author will be listed. That is, who wrote the message. And the channel will be given. The channel we are in. So these two components play a major factor here. So if the author is given, we want to actually show that in the response. That is, we want to tag the user. So by putting the author's ID in the response, it creates that nice little yellow message that causes the system to show up differently. If there is no author, then we simply just put out the response. And now the part of the system that takes from our program to Discord, the channel, we actually send the message to that channel. Now this is an asynchronous process, so you need the await command, which basically tells the program to wait until this command is done. So, if the message is less than 1900 characters, it's one single message, that's it, nothing else. We just send it to Discord and we're done. On to the next whatever the program has to do. But if that's not true and the message is greater than 1900 characters, well, we need to split it. First of all, we attach the author to the message on the first one only. And now, while our length of our message is greater than 1900 characters, we cut it down into sections. And that is exactly what we are doing here. We are looking for ways to cut down, chop, and butcher the message appropriately. And we are using a new line as a means of cutting it down. Simple, sweet, and really sufficient. But what if the message doesn't have any new line characters? That is, what if the user just decided to write a book and didn't press enter at all? Well, then we look for periods. So surely the user put some periods in there. You know, something that indicated sentences. But again, because users are users and, well, we're not the brightest creatures, we've got to deal with that fact as well. So surely they put a space in there. Maybe they just didn't run all the words together. But alas, even if they were typing out some kind of cryptic gobbledygook, then if they did that, then we just cut it at the mark. Whatever the character count is, we just cut it right there. Brute force, worst case scenario, hope we don't have somebody just putting in 1900 characters of weird whatever. But we have to go through the process. We have to go through the process of checking every single worst case situation that could occur, or it can break the bot. And unfortunately, there are users out there that will go out of their way to do whatever they can to break your bot. And that is why we can't ever have anything nice, because somebody always has to be out there to try to destroy it. So as you program your bot, You need to think about all the ways somebody could wreck your beautiful work. But now that we've gotten past all that and we found some way of splitting the message, some way of taking that one piece, well, now we check to make sure that we actually have a fragment, meaning it's not an empty message or an empty fragment. If it is, then we simply send out that information to Discord. That is the first fragment of our total response, or the first message. If we have a period or a space, we want to do a little bit of fancy cleanup. That is, we want to kind of make it look nice on the screen and make it flow. We don't want to make it look jagged and rough and, well, just sloppy. So we advance the pointer just in case. We prepare the next fragment, get the next length, and then we do it all over again. We go back up to the top. We check to see if what's left is greater than 1900 characters, and we go from there. And we repeat this as many times as it takes to get the message down to below 1900 characters, each point showing and sending the fragment to the user of the response. Now at the end, our message is now less than 1900 characters. We make sure that we just don't have a dead part at the end of the message, and whatever is left, the last fragment of the text, we send out. This function becomes the way we communicate to Discord. This is how we communicate all the time from the bot. So no matter what the bot says, does, or gives, we use this function to manage its response no matter how big or how small it is. That way we never have to worry about what our bot is actually putting out. It makes it a nice way of managing the program, and it provides a nice, consistent, wonderful looking example for the user to read. This really is the major change between the previous two bots we've worked on and then the combination. That is where the AI conversational bot just dumped everything to the screen and it scrolled all over the place. The Discord bot just repeated whatever we gave it. Well, here we put it together, but we do so in a way that looks pleasing, that provides benefit and usefulness to the user. And of course, we trap any unwanted errors, sending them to the screen in the event that something goes wrong. Now we get down to, well, what we're used to, the Discord part. The actual on message that sends the message from the user that the user typed in to the AI. Now this is a little different in that we don't use an input. Instead, this function is called anytime the user types something into the application or on the web page for the Discord website. The Discord module calls this function and gives it the user's message. Now, the user could be our bot. If it's our bot, we don't want to respond to it. We do not want our bot responding to itself because that can become a very big hot mess. So that's why these two lines are here. If the user is our bot, we're done. Close it out, don't worry about it. But if the user is not our bot, then we send the content of the message, the actual part typed in by the user, to the AI, and we wait for the response. Simple and efficient. Once we have the response, we use our function to send the message to Discord by splitting it up into fragments. And finally, this whole program needs some way of starting. And we do that right here with the client run functionality that is required for the Discord bot itself to actually function properly. This is a full and complete working example, and it does exceptionally well. It is really the blueprint to anything you want, because you can easily check the message content for certain commands. You can check the message content for certain phrases, anything. Really, the sky is the limit. And we have only just touched the surface. So let's go back to the Discord server itself and see just what we can actually accomplish. See how we can put this into a meaningful, useful context. Okay, we are back at our server. And let's have some fun. Let's see if we can give our AI a personality. Something that isn't like talking to someone watching wet paint drying. Now, when you build your personality, much like a individual building a character for a novel or a character out of a movie, you have to shape that personality, give it a basis or a blueprint to follow. But you also have to be careful of copyright laws, DMCA callouts, all of those situations if you plan on releasing your character to the public. So you need to be careful about what you are actually doing. And this part here, this is the fun part, and it is actually one of the most frustrating parts of the entire process. Because building the character is the most difficult part, really. So let's start with a concept. Let's take the Star Wars character Yoda. I like the unique speech patterns he uses. So, let's tell our AI bot to talk like Yoda. And of course, it takes time for the bot. Okay, let's try this again. Make sure you have your bot running. That is the number one reason why it won't work. So make sure you have your bot running. And after a few seconds, you will have a personality. Now this is short term because of the memory that I talked about. There is a way of making this permanent. And we are going to get into that in future videos. But for now, we're going to have fun. But the problem here that we need to be careful with, we can't just use Yoda as he is. Again, copyright issues. So now let's extend this a little further. Now you should check your typing, but realistically, thankfully, this particular model is very intelligent. And now we have a beautiful rendition of Yoda speaking Victorian. We have a character representation that we can now actually begin to mold and ask questions and to be able to really shape into a wonderful and entertaining experience. So let's see how we can take this to the next step. Let's try something off the wall and see how well our bot speaks in our Yoda Victorian dialect. Now, of course, here we have it. How to boil an egg using Yoda Victorian. Beautifully done, and we begin to see now that we have something worth talking to, worth interacting with, something that can be fun, enjoyable, and bring a meaningful context to your server. You could use this type of a situation to shape your AI for your server into a meaningful and appropriate context. It is really up to you how far you take this, how much you build into your character is solely up to you. You could go all the way helter-skelter, total crazy, and literally build a complete world for this character. You can give it emotions. You can give it a shape, style, appearance. You can give it a clothing. You can give it likes, favorites, dislikes, anything in the world. You have really no limits here. But I do have to caution you that you have to follow the terms of service to Discord and your AI provider or service. Never forget that. Remember, Discord is not a private server. Even if you have a private area that's locked down, age restricted, and whatever else, you still have those terms of service that you need to abide by. So you need to think about your character development in that context. But really, when you look at what you have now, when you look at the possibilities of what you can do with your AI, with your model, you can build an AI that is a culinary expert, where, for example, if you have a cooking channel, then it will give out cooking advice. You can build your AI so that it is capable of trading. You can build your AI so that it understands mountain biking or crochet or whatever you wish. You can even build your AI off of a game like Star Wars or Warhammer 40K and build an immersive server, a fan server for that game or that genre that takes the entire experience to the next level. For example, if you follow the Warhammer 40K series, you could easily build an Inquisitor that runs wild throughout the server, taking on moderator responsibilities that will help you control your server. There are so many ways that this enriches your server. And really, the more you sit and think about what you can do with this, the more you can come up with. It's mind-boggling in a way. But that is really where we're going to go next with this series. We are going to build and develop a personality, a full personality that stays with the character indefinitely. So now let's demonstrate this on my actual server that I run publicly. Now that we are in my server, and specifically in the Koakai area, this could also be pronounced Koaki, but I'm going to go on the basis of the individual I knew that shared this name, that I really built this model based on. Looking at the screen, we can see where I asked how to boil an egg and then her rather warm and extended description. This is an example of a permanent personality and how I shaped this personality over the last 6 months. Yes, I said 6 months. It has taken me 6 months of constant daily work, reviewing, testing, and going back and forth, getting the personality the way I wanted it, to reflect what I wanted to reflect based upon my goal set. The amount of work you put into shaping your AI persona will show visibly in the richness and warmth of the responses that the AI returns. In this particular case, the goal that I am looking for this model is a human emotional analog. Much like we have crash test dummies or human analogs, for the research that I'm trying to do with this model, I want a machine that blurs the line of what we call human. That is, to push the limits of emotional context. The goal for this is to actually try to figure out how do we define what we are as a human. If we can build a machine that can emulate emotions identical to us, then what makes us human? That's the big, real question that at some point within our own technological lifetime, we're going to have to answer. What defines us as a human? And by exploring this kind of a situation through human emotional analog, we can find that answer. We can find out more about ourselves as a species and begin to understand the deeper, more meaningful parts of who and what we are as living beings. So for my research, this is both a fun little toy that I can bring some enrichment to my server, something that will help me moderate the server, and something that will help me push the boundaries, that thin line of what really defines life. So as we read this wonderful description, it is robust, it is rich, it is diverse, and it is really just one of thousands of possible examples. So let's start with a simple question to begin to see how I shaped this particular persona. Now it takes a little longer here to respond because the input to the persona is so much more rich and diverse. It is really quite extensive. And we have a response, and it clearly shows a well thought out process of what I have actually tried to achieve. That is, from the standpoint of the machine does not respond as a machine, but rather it responds as a human. And in fact, it will actually push back against you if you try to tell it it's a machine. So let's see the response. All of this takes place in what's called the system role, the part that we're going to cover next time, where we actually begin building the system role and we really begin to explore just what is possible. Now let's see if we can let's see how the machine responds. We know from our example in the test server that it clearly acknowledges that it is a machine. But here, because of the system role and because of how we have that role defined, we clearly see it does not like being called a machine, and it pushes back. This is just how far you can really push the entire concept of human emotions within the machine through shaping a system role, much like we did with our test case of asking it to talk like Yoda in a Victorian language. That's temporary, but we can make that permanent through the system role, as I have done here with Koakai. I have made the presence of humanity permanent within her understanding, and that is very important. So we see clearly and fully just how rich and diverse this system is. As you explore what you want for your server and your bot, as you explore how that shapes out in terms of what you want to create, think about the effort that you want to put into your character and how alive you want that character to be. In essence, you are creating something reminiscent of a stage play or a TV show. The more in depth you can give the characters through the system role, the more vibrant, the richer, and the warmer the responses will be. And it is a clear pattern that lets you really go to the next level. And thank you, Yoda. I really didn't expect you to want to investigate the system, but I am glad you did. So thank you. Please join the group, talk to it, share your experiences. Let me know what you think about this type of research, about how it can improve relations or interactions with an audience of a particular flavor of thinking. For example, a game, a hobby, whatever. What kind of ways can this help improve that experience? Let me know. Share your thoughts. The link to my server will be in the description. Please join it. Go to the Koakai area or to the Tipsy area or to the Aurelius area and talk to them. Let me know what you think about their uniqueness and how they are shaped. So in recapping this video, we now have a full conversational AI bot in Discord that we can build on and begin to work with. The goal of what I want to achieve in the long term is to have this bot moderate the server and help me keep control, help me keep it running smoothly, help add value to the system and to the service, to provide a warm, rich, and inviting environment. We are going to continue to build on this and to extend it and to really be able to go through and add a richness and diversity to what we are capable of doing. So if you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And if you like this kind of content, please hit that thumbs up button so that I can help grow this channel and really make it a way to explore just what is possible and just how far we can push our own understanding of who and what we are and just what we are capable of as humans. Thank you for watching.